What's up, guys? This is the It Ain't Easy podcast. I'm your host, Dom Tremanson. Let's get it. I'm here today with Ilan cumberbirch, founder and owner of Yard Athletics. Really excited to have him here, UBC alum.
Yeah. Stoked to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Cool. So I know, my first, I think, time seeing you, not meeting you, because it took a couple of years after that. We were actually at UBC together, and I think you were probably there a couple of years before me. Rookie, I think Jim Deal was the strength coach at the time.
Yeah.
And I just remember coming into the gym and like my first impression was like, damn, like I gotta hit some squats. Man's got thighs. And I thought, like, I think maybe you were one of the first people I saw, and I was like, damn, like, are there other people that look like this? And then my other thought is just, composure and an energy and a presence. Like the other times that I saw you, just like leadership skills, like unspoken. I didn't hear a lot of what you were saying, but you have a presence about you. And I think that speaks to what you're doing now with your program, one of the most popular kind of gyms in the city.
I appreciate that.
Studio focus, kind of personal training. And it's a beautiful twist, I think, on, the studio scene in Vancouver. I don't think there's a lot like it, and there needs to be more. But before we get into that, I kind of want to know, up until that point, like to UBC, like what were you like? What were your hobbies as a young Ilan? Like what was his thing?
I'll try to keep it brief. I grew up, born and raised in Vancouver, BC. I grew up in Dunbar. Really fortunate to have a great family. So there's 6 total. My mom and dad, Grant and Armida, and then I have an older sister, Mika, myself, my little sister, Natalie, and my little brother, Liam.
Cool.
Anyways, went to Lord Kitchener Elementary School, grew up, played tons of sports, and I was actually a pretty husky, we'll say husky young fella. And soccer, rugby, hockey, baseball, track, cross country, et cetera. And then I ended up going to Prince of Wales Mini School, which was a quote unquote enriched program. I got in primarily due to athletics.
Cool.
There's that. Growing up, as I said, like tons of sports. Didn't really get into weight training per se until I was like 14, and started training with twist conditioning. So that was my first kind of experience with off-season training, specific to hockey.
Right. With the enriched kind of mini school you were talking about, was there sport-specific programs associated to it?
I think that was the selling feature for me. Like hindsight 2020, it wasn't my call, and my parents didn't know. I wouldn't go do that again.
Yeah.
We were really isolated. It was literally a separate school, a separate building from the main school, and it was called the mini school, and it was literally a mini building, and it was like a satellite location.
But it gave you fability to kind of like go to camps and things like that?
It was more so, it was really catered heavily towards the arts.
Okay.
Which was great.
Yeah.
A little bit more cultured and, a little bit more experience in different realms. I also grew up playing the cello actually till I was 12.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I did appreciate the arts, but from an athletic standpoint, there wasn't as much flexibility as one might thought. I think that my athletics probably, in their eyes, got in the way of my education.
Yeah, fair.
It was very heavy on the academics and the arts. Yeah.
Cool. And then, you were saying about your hockey academy.
Yeah. From there, so you're talking through high school?
Yeah.
High school, we had a hockey team, we had a hockey team in high school, but I played just minor hockey. Yeah, so I played Vancouver Thunderbirds minor hockey, and then played junior B in grade 12, Granby Steelers, and then I went and played junior A in the BCHL had a quick cup of coffee with the West Side Warriors when I was 16 or 17, and then down to the Burnaby Express, and then I got traded to the Surrey Eagles, finished with the Surrey Eagles,
cool.
And then after that it was on to university. So yeah.
Right. When you're playing at the junior level, maybe you could speak to like the organizational structure. I'm kind of fascinated by, the club system versus like the high school system of sports.
Yeah.
And I think hockey in Canada is like one of the only systems, maybe soccer as well, that kind of models that European model. You can be associated to like the pro clubs at a super young age, and I think there's a way wider opportunity for like maturation and growth at that early age because you get so much exposure.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, now the landscape's really changed, and it changed from when I was in minor hockey. So now the way it looks, like minor hockey associations still exist. Majority of players, if they're good enough, will go, I mean, I shouldn't even say that, majority of players will go to academies. And then from there they'll go play junior. So there's various junior levels. So there's major junior, so that's like WHL, OHL, the Q, that's the Canadian Hockey League. So then under that there's tier 2 or junior A. And so each province kind of has their own leagues for that. So the BCHL, the AJHL, Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, so on and so forth. Under that, this is where they all kind of like. And there's like crossover and parallels in talent, and again, it's kind of case dependent on the individual and what route they want to take and their developmental stage.
Okay.
So, I mean, like you might get some players in junior A who are quote unquote better, or end up having more prosperous or better careers than someone in major junior, and vice versa. So yeah, then under that, junior B, and then there's the academies. There's major midget or like midget AAA. I'm not sure what they refer to that as now. But yeah, and then under that there's there's the minor hockey ranks. The academies are kind of where it's at now, is my understanding. With that being said, I mean, like personally, I don't love the model. It's a pay to play. They come with a high price tag.
Interesting.
And it's a pretty year-round commitment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, they'll pump out some great talent, but on the flip side to that, like those, young athletes' exposure to other sports and other things in life, and just the overuse and the overprogramming of these young athletes at such a young age.
Yeah.
When really, like it's just turned into a business in a lot of circumstances. So maybe a bit of an unpopular opinion in the hockey world. And I mean, yeah. On the flip side, though, the people that are making a profession in that line of work in hockey, as a coach or a skill coach or a skating coach, that's where the money is to be made. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's really interesting. Like on top of those problems, like a bit of a barrier to entry, like in terms of like the cost, like you're saying, pay to play.
Yeah.
And probably like not many subsidies or like players giving back to say like, hey, like this program costs $100,000, $50,000 to play. Like we need to give out like 2 spots on the team for somebody that can't afford it.
I don't know what that looks like. I know there's some of that, and I don't know how much. But I think for 75% of those kids on those teams, somebody, likely their parents, is shelling out a pretty penny on an annual basis.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times there's the fees to attend the school, which are very likely a private school. In addition to that, the fees to play on the team. So yeah, that's not the case. The private school scenario isn't the case for all academies. Some are in conjunction with a public school. So yeah, right. I don't know the percentage on that, but some are private, some are public. But all of them, for those academies, there's a fee associated with it. And it, granted, obviously those go to coaches' salaries, travel, ice rentals. But yeah, hockey has turned into a very, very expensive sport. I know it was, and I'm sure it was like when I was growing up playing, but I think it's definitely grown exponentially insofar as the financial commitment and requirements in order to, excel and just be competitive at it.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, well, whether it's in the best interest of the player or not, there's this kid that's playing 10, 12 months out of the year versus another kid that, wants to maybe go play a season of baseball or lacrosse, or something in the summer, right? For 6 months, right? Well, over 3, 4, 5 years, right? He's getting 50% less, he's developing it at a slower stage. Granted, there's lots of transferability. And in my opinion, getting exposure to those other sports and for lack of a better term, cross training is extremely beneficial to their physical and athletic development. With that being said, I mean, there reaches a point where, aside from like the mental and emotional burnout, where that maybe that athletes that doing it year round will experience, if for some of them truly do love it and they continue and they persist and they see it through, and they're going to be developing at a far faster rate than somebody that's not partaking at that same level.
Yeah. I think, you know, there's quite a difference or contrast between like the States and Canada too. Whereas like, you know, hockey and the cost of like that level of hockey at the grassroots is like, you know, a product of supply and demand. Like people have the willingness to pay for that. But in the States, like, you know, you have these major companies like, you know, Bauer, Nike, or Adidas that are pumping money into like programs and saying, hey, here's $1 million to run this like basketball club in California. And you have, you know, the kids don't have to pay anything. They get packages. It doesn't matter what sport you play. They have enough to fund hockey, basketball, etc. So it's unfortunate that you can't really have that model here.
I don't know what sort of subsidies, if any, there are.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's like affiliations with, you know, like a few equipment companies, like you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to be much more than, okay, you know, we'll kit out your entire academy at a reduced rate. But insofar as like an actual grant or, you know, contribution, monetary contribution to the program to offset, you know, maybe there's a scholarship here or there. You know, okay, we'll allocate, you know, a 25. We'll cover the fees, the true cost. Not what you're charging. We'll cover the true costs for this athlete to, you know, be enrolled in your academy and play on a team for a year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like those can probably get absorbed, you know, by accumulation of the net profits, the net proceeds of all those other programs. I mean, again, I'm to an extent I don't know the ins and outs of it insofar as like the financials. But yeah, there's definitely large revenues being generated. What the nets are on that, if there are any, I'm not sure. I feel majority of them are probably getting reinvested back in to those programs. You know, so what that looks like, I'm not sure. But building facilities, maybe building their own ice rinks, maybe building training facilities. You know, getting more coaches, better coaches. So yeah, but there's certainly a business element to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You spoke on like, you know, the benefit of cross training and the diversification into different sports. What about like just strength and conditioning and like weight room training? When did that kind of start for you? Were you always kind of into it through high school? Or?
I remember I started going to the gym with my dad. Well, my dad had like one of those garage gym, like lat pull down, seated row, like spin around leg extension, like in the basement with the bench, right?
Yeah.
And he'd sit down there and rock tapes like on an old school stereo, right? And I always remember like he'd like tape his wrists up with white tape, and he'd have chalk, and like he was a big dude. I mean, still is strong dude. And I'd go down there and I just kind of like peek my head around the corner and like watch him work out. And he was, you know, he's not a scary guy by any means. I'm kind of making him out to sound scary. It was just like intense and it was cool. It was intriguing. I was intrigued by it, right? And then like he'd be sweating and I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing, man? But it was, as I said, intrigued. So eventually, you know, it got to a point where, you know, he would go to the gym and I would join him. You know, I don't know how old, maybe I was 12 or 13, right? And he'd be like, yeah, come. And, you know, a lot of the gyms, they have the machine set up and there's like a circuit. Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, you go to like this machine and like you do this, and then like go to the next machine, do that. And he'd just be like, okay, I want you to do the circuit, right? There's like, you know, 6 machines. Maybe it was like a chest press, a leg extension, a hamstring curl, like a leg press.
That's
I don't know, try, right? And he'd be like, just go through. He's like, do 12 reps on each and just go 3 times through it. Right. And like you want it to kind of like burn, like, you know, and it's simple enough machines that they're kind of hard to mess up, right? So I think that was probably the beginning of it. And then, as I mentioned, when I was 14, and that's when I'd say I probably started to get a little bit more serious about hockey. A lot of it too is just insofar as hockey and development and career path is like what's it? Naivety? How do you say it? Right?
Naivety.
Naivety. Yeah, is that how you say it?
So.
Yeah. It's just being naive too. You know, the different routes and the different options and the different paths. So, anyways, I think at 14 is when I kind of started to get serious and like, okay, I'm like a decent player. Like, you know, maybe I could do more than just, you know, finish out my midget at 16 and call it a day. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But I enjoyed it enough that I wanted to pursue that. So.
Yeah. I love that point your dad gave you too, just in terms of like instructional cues. He said you just want it to burn a little. That's a great
so simple
instruction, right? And it's so simple, but like there's so much discovery in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because okay, I want it to burn. I'm just naturally what am I gonna do? I'm gonna slow it down. I'm gonna take my time. And I'm gonna pay attention to what I'm doing.
Yeah, or you're gonna do it like and it was probably like you wanted to burn, and like in addition to that, like choose a weight that is difficult enough that it burns, you know, for like the last 2 to 3 reps. Like you leave it at that and it's like, okay, so I'm going to put it on 50, right? Okay. And I do it and I do 12 and I'm like, oh, Like that was too easy. Like there's no resistance, right? Okay, well
Yeah.
then I'm gonna go to 80. Okay, like a little harder, but
Yeah.
okay, well I'm gonna go to 100. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. I got to burn on the last one. Well, okay, the next time through, maybe I'll try 110. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay. Now we're talking, right? And then you feel, and then I remember, yeah, I had a little book, right? And I record it, right? And I write it all down. Anyways,
Yeah.
but yeah, so 14, twist conditioning. So that was Peter Twist. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was like the man. So yeah, he went to UBC. Then he was strength coach with the Canucks. And he started twist conditioning. And in that time, he was training the likes of like Trevor Linden, a little bit of the Sedin twins, I think, like a lot of the Canucks. I think, yeah, he used to be the strength coach for the Canucks as well.
Yeah.
Anyways, and that's like where you wanted to be. So that was like, honestly, that was an eye opener for me.
Was that on the North Shore?
Yeah, it was on the North Shore, right across from North Shore Winter Club.
Yeah, like Sealand area.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're still there.
Cool.
But yeah, I remember that. So I would have been, yeah, as I said, 14. How did I used to get over there? I used to get a ride with a guy that I used to play hockey with, Zach Wittenberg. He's now a commercial real estate agent with CBRE. So yeah, Zach played he was a little older, but he lived in the area. So he'd drive me over there, pick me up, and it was a full day. Take me over there, and then we'd go to ice over at Burnaby 8 rinks after our workout, and then we go home. So it was like a full day thing. And yeah, anyways, I could go on and on about that experience, but yeah, that was about 14, did that. And then actually, it's funny, I was walking down here and I was like, how it all comes full circle.
Yeah.
Their head strength coach there, at Twist, was a guy named John Beulah. And then John Beulah branched off with a guy that I knew through UBC kind of because, anyways, I wasn't at UBC yet, but my dad used to assistant coach there. So anyways, he was a UBC alumni as well, Troy Dalton. So anyways, John and Troy, they branched out on their own, and they started training hockey players. And I loved John from Twist. I had a great experience with him. He's a good coach, I thought. Anyways, so I went and worked with them. But they actually they ended up, their first space they rented was right here on Railway Street in the Rice building. Yeah, in the Rice building right next door. So yeah, funny story. But it was probably no bigger than this spot up here. It was just like big wood beams. They laid down some rubber flooring. They had like 2-3 squat racks, maybe some.
Were they on the ground floor?
No, it was like the third floor.
That's funny.
And actually, this is funny too.
Yeah.
It was back when West Beach was around.
Okay.
That's how long ago this stuff was. So yeah, do you even know West Beach?
I don't.
Okay,
I'm shaking my head. I'm like,
this is funny. So West Beach was founded by Chip Wilson and I'm sure others.
Okay.
So that was like before, and someone's going to correct me on this, but simultaneous to or prior to Lululemon. But yeah, they had a West Beach office.
Like a gym? Or
no, it was a clothing company. It was like surf. It was like surf and like skate.
I think I have.
It was like
seen
cool.
It.
And I think before that it was like Chip and Pepper, and I think it's
kind of like a Billabong.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. So they used to rent, their spot was down on 4th and Burrard. Now they're putting up a tower there, like across from where the old Comore was. That used to be West Beach.
Yeah.
It was like 3 surfboards, I think, like this, and it said West Beach, or they had a West Beach logo with like 2 half circles with like a maple leaf in them. Anyways, yeah. West Beach was there, and oh man, so many funny stories coming to train down here. Anyways, yeah, we could do a full podcast, me just BSing about BS stories. But anyways, back to what you want to discuss.
Yeah, just kind of understanding of like up to college. And then I know you went to University of Saskatchewan for a stint. And you took kinesiology there. Yeah,
that's right, yeah.
So what was the college experience, like stepping onto campus? What kind of things like changed for you? And what was like the day-to-day?
I'd say like there's a certain level of independence prior to that and playing junior hockey. Aside from when I was in Kelowna, I was never too far from home. I did billet, so there's some independence, but Burnaby, Surrey, it was quick, 45-minute drive home if I needed. Like I'd go home on the weekends usually, like on a Sunday for dinner and go back out. I'd spend most of my time with the billets, but I could go home, and it was stone's throw away.
Right.
But then, the university experience, I mean, I love Saskatoon. I love my time at the University of Saskatchewan. It was certainly eye-opening. But yeah, I remember going out there. I wanted to go the NCAA route. Yeah. That was kind of the goal, to get a full ride scholarship down NCAA. Obviously, it never happened. There were opportunities for financial aid, but, and I mean, I think that's a bit of a misleading it's a bit of a misnomer insofar as the financial aid is based on your parents' net income and everything, like your financial well-being. And fortunately, my parents, they do well, and so the financial aid was not much. It would still cost a significant amount to go to school down in the States, right? Like a lot of money.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, like $100K a year, maybe something like
Yeah.
that, right? And it's like, well, for what? To say that I got a quote unquote scholarship.
And that's what people don't understand as a Canadian. Like you might have the talent. One, there's probably 20-fold the amount of you there than there are here.
Yeah.
But that kid is like 20 grand, 10 grand.
Exactly.
You, it's 120
exactly.
grand.
When you calculate it all, your tuition, your books, your accommodation, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you get to go down and play NCAA for like a big college school. On the flip side of that, like what sort of an education are you getting?
Right.
How transferable and applicable is that when you move back home? Like, some of the courses down there are pretty jokes.
Yeah.
So anyways, I went with the CIS route, now U Sport, and really,
I hate it. Why'd they change it?
I know, it's brutal. Anyways.
Yeah, I never played in U Sport either.
Yeah, no.
CIS.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I loved it, man. And I loved Saskatchewan. I remember at the time I had my license suspended because too many speeding tickets. Anyway, so my dad had to drive me out there, and he dropped me off, and I got set up. Lived with two guys, Kyle Bordas and Steve De Silva. So yeah, those are my first two, roommates out there. Awesome dudes I still talk to today, still great friends of mine. We lived 2 years together. So our first year was on Lane. We call it Polychenko Pound, home of the dogs, because it's University of Saskatchewan Huskies.
Right.
Our logo was a skating dog. Anyways, but yeah, as I said, certain level of independence. We had a great time, probably too good of a time. Hindsight, I think I probably enjoyed myself a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Part of that, I mean, without going too deep into it, I wasn't playing. My first year was essentially a red shirt, and I didn't handle that too well. And definitely, by the end of my second year, was in a depressed state. And kind of, I self-medicated with alcohol. And not to go dark on the podcast.
No, but like you're super far away from home.
Yeah.
It's like you're not a whole lot of people around you, and like not the greatest role models. It's your first year with like not a lot of experience of how to handle yourself in this space.
Totally.
I think a lot of people in that like environment.
And I think that was a big part. I mean, there's a cultural element to that, whereas like, I wasn't playing, so we played Friday, Saturday nights, right? Well, I'm not playing on Friday, and so Thursday night I'd go out, and then Friday I'd go, and then Saturday, and then Sunday. Saturday night the whole team would go out, and then Sunday, we'd have a Sunday fun day.
Yeah.
So I was going out more often than I wasn't.
Yep.
So anyways, wasn't healthy, and just wasn't good on my mental health.
Were you still making the workouts?
Dude, that was my only thing. I worked out like a fiend.
Yeah.
I trained like a fiend.
I believe it.
And that was my therapy. Like, I loved the gym, and that's where I started. That's where I really, really started like loving the gym.
Yeah.
I worked out like a fiend, like probably 6 days a week, like hungover or not. I had my training partners, and I'd be in there, and good buds with a lot of football guys because they were in there a ton too, right? As their off season and I made all the training. Long and short, like by the end of halfway through my second year, reached kind of a point at Christmas time. Long and short, guys finish playing junior hockey. They can go play a half year pro and then come back and play university without losing any eligibility. They don't have to redshirt. So a lot of guys will go do that. They'll finish their junior career, right? They'll go test the waters in pro. Okay, do I like this? How do I stack up? Yay, nay. Okay, maybe this isn't for me. I don't really like it, or this isn't all it was made out to be. Or it's not what I want. I want to go to school.
Yeah.
And they come at Christmas time, and so you get some sick players. You get some great players, right, coming out of the East Coast or the AHL. So anyways, we picked up a new D-man, Matt Delahaye, great guy. So then I got ticked even farther. Like I was in. There's no coming back out of that.
Yeah.
So anyways, I went to have a chat with my coach, and he was going to have a chat with me, and we just both kind of agreed, okay, you're essentially, like, for lack of better terms, cut.
Yeah.
With that being said, take his word for it, and I believe him. He's like, the guys still want you around. So, they want you to keep practicing and training if you want. And so it was great. I kept practicing with the team for the last half of that year. I got moved out of a stall onto a chair, but fold-out chair, but that's okay.
A little salty.
And then I got to play senior hockey, which is actually, it's not really something that we have here in BC.
Okay.
But it's like all the small towns have a senior club, and there's different senior leagues.
Okay.
And you get paid to play. So you get,
Yeah.
I think I don't know, I was making a couple hundred, a few hundred a game. And it was great experience. So honestly, it was fun. And then, at the end of that, that's when I contacted UBC again, because I'd originally been talking to them, and went to UBC and played 3 more years there. Yeah.
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 And did I see you in any capacity at the gym as a student trainer at the strength and conditioning?
That was a funny one. I think, excuse me, sorry about this cough. I think my understanding of the student trainer program, I mean, I'll say this, I wasn't even aware of it when I was in kin at UBC.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a whole nother conversation so far as that degree and how it's structured. But I wasn't even aware of it. I think it's primarily master's students, is it not?
Yeah, it could be primarily master students.
Maybe
and I
I'm
think
wrong.
it's relatively new. Like,
Yeah.
I think post 20.
It definitely wasn't there when Jim was there.
Right? And it was like Joe McCollum.
Yeah.
And like that group that came in post Jim Deal.
Yeah.
I think that introduced like a more formal program.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think before that, there was always guys helping out and stuff like that. But there seems to be like tremendous structure to it now.
I think it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I love the concept, man. I really I admire what Joe's done with that program, and how he's turned that around and implemented a ton more structure to it and formalized it, and it operates the way that a varsity gym should operate.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and like shout out to Jim too, because like I don't think there was much like of a strength and conditioning program years before that even.
No,
right?
there wasn't. Yeah, no,
so
yeah.
It's kind of those two bringing it up from the ground.
Yeah,
and,
for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, what was the difference between like Sask and UBC for you?
I will say that, you know what, I think the friendships I forged in Sask were, I mean, I'd say a lot stronger. I mean, now, do I keep in touch with them as much? I mean, I still keep in touch with, I'd say, about a half a dozen of them, like, pretty regularly. And it's cool. It's cool to see, their past, and we still get to connect. We probably got to connect a little bit more often, a few years back through weddings and stuff like that. But I still keep in touch, like, text them quick, hey, how you doing? They'll send a photo of a new kid they've had, but like a child, or, they'll be like, hey, we're in town, we'll link up. So that's really special. But I think in Saskatoon, just geographically smaller city, everyone lives closer. There's less in town to do. There's like, I mean, they got the Saskatoon Blades, and then they got the Huskies. So it's like, people come to the games. And back then they played in the Rutherford, which is like an old World War I aircraft hangar. Tiny old barn, like rusty beams hanging from the ceiling. You flip a puck up, hit a beam, rust fall down. Like, it was old.
That's cool though.
But it was cool, right? And you'd get like, you get a few hundred in there, and the place is rocking, right? I know now they have a new rink. I haven't been. I think it's gorgeous. I think Gordie Howe, or it's named after him, or in memory of him, or something like that. Anyways, back to it. People were just geographically closer. So I was like, hey man, what are you doing? Like, come over for dinner. We're making like burritos, like easy, right? Come on over. Or like, hey, what are you guys doing? Anyway, so you just see people more. And there's less to do. In the big city, in Vancouver, right? It's like, okay, well, what part of town do you want to go out to? Where do you want to go? Oh, like, I'm going to a Canucks game, or like, oh, we're going for dinner. Or like,
it's going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah, exactly, right? So people just, you just don't hang out. And not to mention the campus is freaking huge, right? So, UBC was a little more disconnected. We definitely had like some great dudes, but didn't have that cohesiveness that we had in Saskatchewan.
Yep. And then, in an environment like that, I've always said that, I have a lot of family in Winnipeg. I've always said that like the prairies and kind of like central Canada has like a deeper sense of community, and people need to lean on each other more for exactly what you're saying. It's like the city, there's too much to do.
The nicest people, man. The nicest people in the world, like, literally take their shirt off your back. I came there, this long-haired kid from BC that played junior A. So like just put in perspective, there's nobody else on the team. I don't think there's maybe one or two other guys that played junior A after having played major junior. So when you're 20, you get to stay as, you know, you're only allowed a certain number of 20-year-olds. So some guys, if they're not good enough, they'll get cut essentially and have to go play junior A. But so I was the only guy that hadn't played junior or major junior. I mean, I will say, you know, there's probably a bit of a bias towards major junior, and you know what, overall you're going to get better players out of major junior. Like, so that's just the stats and that's just the facts, and you can't compete with that. So everyone on that team was a better player than I. With that being said, you know, I was a bit of an outlier, but I was still accepted and still, you know, welcomed with open arms and you know, treated as an equal and viewed, you know, and again, broader than just the friendships I forged from that hockey team, other friendships, you know, through their friends and their families and other people in the community that you know, I still talk to today. So yeah, it's pretty unique, very unique, and a special part of my life and my experience.
Cool. When you're at UBC and there's, you know, there's a little bit more of a disconnect between people just because nature of so much things to do, nature of the hustle because of the necessity to survive in this expensive city. Would you say that there's like a level of like, okay, I need to put my head down and kind of figure out what I'm going to do after this? And like, were you thinking kind of like of a concept like yard or something like that through college?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think with that kin degree, I mean, it became pretty apparent to me that your options after, you know, attaining said degree are very limited. You did kin as well, right?
I did,
yeah. So it's like, okay, I'm going to go manage community center or like, or what? You know,
or start your own thing.
Yeah. So like there's that. Or I can go do, you know, a few more years of school in physio, or I can go do education. Well, I don't want to be a phys ed teacher just because, like, nothing wrong. I just don't want to. And, you know, I thought about doing physio, but it's like, what? So that I can pay, you know, an additional, I don't even know what it is, like a couple hundred grand and like a few more years to, you know, potentially earn the same amount. So anyways, wasn't for me. And I always kind of said, like, I want to start a gym. Now there's a lot more to that than just starting a gym. But yeah, so anyways, I kind of had it in the back of my head, and I'd say that, you know, in my experiences, at least like with the varsity gym at UBC and that structure and the structure of training as a team and like team training in the college and university environment, it really is what inspired our business model and how we like to implement and coach. And the services that we offer today, at least in our from a group training standpoint. But yeah, like the physical layout of the gym that we have now at Yard, and how we train and deliver our quote unquote group classes. We coin them semi-private training because they're not like, it's a group of people, but it's not like when people hear group, they think like 20, 30, you know, it's like it's groups of like 4 to 8. So anyways, definitely influenced that.
Like from the outside looking in, like I love the varsity aesthetic to the gym, and it's such a differentiator, and like that's the way I train. And a lot of the studios is no Josh to like the ones that exist in Van. It's not really my vibe to want to like work out with a group of people in that capacity for like that price and not lift heavy weights.
Totally,
like that's just not me. And like I think a lot of people are the same way with that sports background. If you have any history being in like a proper or more formal strength and conditioning format, in kind of having that like similar thought, like when I was going through school and I'm like, I want to create a gym as well. I noticed that there's like some limitations in terms of, you know, the square footage and like the sheer availability of space, like in the downtown core, that it's like, okay, I want to create the varsity gym or recreate that and have it available for like, you know, the market here. Is there a level of like, you know, compromise or like thought that goes into like creating a model that not only is like your baby in terms of like creating your vision, but also you know, satisfying the needs to survive in the city?
Yeah, totally. Where to start on this? I mean, like my original concept, this is before I had any idea about real estate, zoning, bylaws, you know, anything that you could do with the city. My original concept, and actually the kind of, you know, the inspiration, you know, down in the Olympic Village, there's that big, it's like a red, it's not a red barn, but it's like a big warehouse right beside, it's like right down on the water beside where the the police officers, sorry, park all their cars in that empty lot. And it was just like a big, it's just like a big, there's nothing in it. It's like vacant, right? Anyways, I was like, Kate, get a big ass industrial warehouse looking thing, like one structure. And then it's going to be a co-op. It's going to be a co-op space, and you're going to have multiple businesses operating out of there under one roof, right, with a common area. So, you know, I wanted to have a gym, I wanted to have a barber shop, I wanted to have a coffee shop, I wanted to have a butcher, I wanted to have a grocer and a smoothie bar, right? And you walk into, quote unquote, the yard, right? And it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to grab my espresso here from like Espresso Joe's or whatever, right? And then, and then I'm going to get, you know, I'm going to go like do my workout, right, at the yard gym, then I get my hair cut, and then, you know, maybe I can have a smoothie, or like, I might not do them all. And there's going to be a common seating area in the middle, right? And it's more just like a spot to be, right? And like, so I think the closest thing to that would be, say, turf. Like turf's done something somewhat similar, but the biggest limiter on it is real estate in Vancouver. And the zoning, like, you know, the number of different permits you're going to need to pull, like you need food processing, liquor license, you know, okay, well, you got this operating, and okay, well, that's different, you know, safety measures, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's just such a racket. The city makes it so difficult to do any business, anything cool, hence why it's, you know, coined such a dud of a city sometimes from a fun factor. So anyways, that was kind of the original concept. And then, you know, you sit there and you look into it more and more and more, and you realize, and basically, you know, you just kind of create this is at least my process, you create a criteria, you know, of things that you like. And you tour spots and you check them out, and you know, you're looking for something that's going to check, you know, say you got 5 things, or you're looking for like 3 of 5. If you get 4, that's great. You're probably not going to hit 5 of 5. Hit 5 of 5, that's like a white buffalo, man. It's like a unicorn. Like, it probably doesn't exist.
Catch it and never let it go.
And if it does, like, you probably can't afford it, right? So that's the other thing, right? So I think, and in addition to that, I think that's definitely something that a lot of people in business lose sight of. And, you know, by no means trying to sound like greedy capitalism, but like the purpose of, generally at least my purpose in starting a business is to make money. Right. Like, if you're operating at a loss or losing money, you know, or at least don't have any, you know, aspirations of doing that, then it's just a passion project, I suppose. But that's, you know, for my stage of life, like, that's not what I'm after. So anyways, so a lot of people will go secure a spot, you know, super sexy. I'm on 4th Ave, or I'm on Robson, and like, I got tons of street appeal and walk by, right? And I'm also shelling out like $20,000 a month just in rent alone. But like, everyone sees me and like, I'm cool. And it's like, but like, you're bleeding money every month, right? So we went subterranean, and it actually worked out perfect. So we're in a basement. You know, with that, there's a cost that comes with that. Like, we don't get any sunlight. That's kind of whack if you're down there all day. And you know what? Honestly, it's not that healthy. So, you know, you create flexibility in the schedule for the staff and make sure people get out of there and like,
get out.
You know, exactly. You know, anyways, we're kind of on the edge of downtown. Like, we are downtown, but on the edge of, you know, downtown east side and Gastown. So, you know, probably paying a little bit less per square foot than you would on like a main retail, you know, area. So anyways,
with that, like, comes a necessity to have sort of like a loyal customer base, right? And I think that comes before you even get your brick and mortar space. Right.
So that was something, I mean, Dom, we were super fortunate. I mean, we used to rent space out of Groundwork Athletics. So, I mean, my full circle, you know, when I finished university, then I went played a year pro over in Europe. And during that year pro over in Europe, prior to that, we're spending my off seasons working with factory hockey player development and as a coach there. So anyways, and I reached a point where I was like, okay, you know, this is what I want to pursue. And I want to, you know, I want a piece of the pie. Essentially, I want to buy into this company. It's another convo, but we worked out of Groundwork Athletics. Then, you know, after I was done playing professionally, reached a point where the hockey players left for the summer, or for the season rather. So I had no clients. I went from being, you know, gangbusters busy, you know, pumping out 4, 5, 6 groups a day and on ice stuff, and you know, it was great, to all of a sudden, like, poof, done, nothing. And so what am I going to do for these other, you know, eight months of the year, right? You know, I did a little bit of skill development, on ice stuff, had some teams come through, but personal training made sense. So started doing the personal training anyways, and then eventually rebranded an offshoot, you know, from factory hockey and started Yard Athletics.
Okay.
And yard athletics came. It was there's a group of individuals I trained under factory hockey technically. Yeah. 3 mornings a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 a.m. Buddies of mine, $20 a head. I think there's like 6 or 8 of them.
Yeah.
And I trained them the exact same way. We'd actually follow the exact programs that we did with the hockey guys.
Cool.
Anyways, and one day I remember we were in there, and buddy's like, "Oh man, check this out!" Like just I don't know. It was probably a Friday. We just finished a big gun run, and there's dumbbells absolutely everywhere. He's like, "Oh, it looks like a boneyard." He's like, "Yeah, it's the boneyard," and I was right, and we were like, "Oh, the boneyard, yeah, cool. That's kind of cool." And then. So that's how yard came to be.
Yeah.
Or the yard athletics. And we didn't know, it was like, what do you call it? The yard athletics. I mean, and we kind of refer to it in all 3 ways, depending on the context. But groundwork athletics allowed us a platform to take that step. So, I mean, yeah, it came with its, struggles, right? In sharing a space and trying to scale a business and grow a business in a cooperative, space where you're sharing with other businesses and coexisting. Yeah. But it did allow us to reach that point where we're sitting there looking and going, okay, well, right now we're spending X amount per month in rent, and this isn't even our own space. So okay, well, for this amount, and we're grossing this amount of revenue, okay, well, what could we afford, right? So it kind of gives you an idea, like, hey, this is our threshold. Like, if we just take this and transplant it over into our own space, this right? Is where we're starting. We'll be able to, service that fee, that rental, that amount. Granted, there's tons of other expenses that come with your own space, let alone the build out. So, I mean, that was another thing where we took a bit of a dive of a spot and had to, inject a fair amount of capital into it to get it up to a standard that we wanted that was, usable. Yep. But, on the flip side of that, our rent is manageable.
When you say like that capital investment, what do you mean? Like stripping the place down?
Yeah, so I mean, if I showed you photos right now, I think
I've seen some. Yeah.
Yeah. So it originally, we're 307 West Pender Room between Hamilton and Homer. So it's a heritage building. Yep. One in from Papa's Fur underneath the Magnet. Yeah. So old building, like the concrete in there has like stones in it. You know what I mean? Like it's old school. Yeah.
There's a Nemesis across from you.
There's Nemesis down the hill. So if you're standing facing Nemesis.
Okay.
And Hastings is behind you.
Yeah.
And the Cobblestone Hill is going straight up, right? Up towards Pender. Go up the Cobblestone Hill.
Okay, you're a block up.
Yeah. So go up the Cobblestone Hill. Yep. Okay, now you're on Pender and Hamilton.
Okay.
Okay, bang a right like you're going to go into downtown financial district, right? Along that building is Papa's Fur. We're the next building in. So the Magnet is the bar, and there's literally a glass door that says Yard Athletics. Yeah. That's it.
Cool.
Open it, go down, another door in. It's kind of cool. It's like, I'm always like, oh, should we brand it more? Like, should we get more street exposure? Like, people are like, no, it's kind of cool because it's like a speakeasy.
Yeah,
right. It's like it's like this is what like these people talk about the yard. Yeah. Like, what is this? It's like, I mean, honestly, it's like you reach a point.
Well, you don't know until you go down there.
Yeah, I reach a point though with this thing where I'm like, okay, we got to stop the bleeding, man. Just like paint the floors, like it's good. Paint the steps, like put down some grip tape, like it's good. I don't really care. Yeah. But you walk down, and you open that door, and then people are always like, I mean, it's cool. That for me is like, like fucking rights, man. Yeah. Excuse me, I don't know, you can swear on this podcast.
Yeah, no, we're no filter.
All right, but it's like, yeah, like fucking rights, man. Like you created something cool. It's special. Like people appreciate this. Like, oh, I had no idea this was here.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I don't even know how we started talking about this.
The injection. The injection.
So originally that space was a printing press.
Okay.
And they printed papers down there. And then Vancouver Film Schools rented it out, and they built sets down there. Huh. I mean, like, there wasn't anything to it. So we stripped it right down. And, I mean, I just said, if anyone is listening to this thinking about opening up a gym, just be aware that if you are going to go get something where you're going to need to put some money into it, it's kind of like Pandora's box, it's like an onion. Every layer you strip back, it's like you find a new surprise. Right. So it's like you think it's super simple. For example, I was like, oh yeah, okay, well, let's just tear up this old wood floor and then we'll just use the foundation. And you tear it up and it's like, oh, it's all uneven. So like now you're gonna have to pour a new pad on top of the pad. Oh, okay, well that involves getting a pump truck in. And it's like, oh, okay, that's to the tune of like, however many tens of thousands of dollars just to get a level floor. Yeah. Right. And it's like, oh yeah, we'll just like mount some mirrors, just like glue some mirrors on the wall. Like, and it's like, oh no, the wall's not like flush or plumb. So, like, if we just do that, then you're going to look in the mirror and you're going to be, like, all warped. And, like, the mirrors are going to break, like, if you touch them. So it's like, okay, well now you need to like back out the, you know, fur out the wall. So it's all, you know what I mean? Just like
Yeah.
simple stuff like that.
Things like that.
And that wasn't even the extent of it. Like,
Are there any other tricks behind gym mirrors? Because I swear, like something about them, like doesn't matter if you're at a rec center or a studio, like they just make you look better.
I think
Is it lighting?
It's a lighting, I think. It's a lighting, I think. Yeah. We went for the cool lighting package. I tried to save some dough. I remember I was like, oh, because, you know, anyways, it's such a process. It's super cool, and I learned so much. Very stressful and very costly, but I learned so much doing it, and I was very involved. I mean, I think at least. But I remember the designer, you know, they give you like an option. They're like, okay, here's what we got. Okay, what do you think? And you're like, okay, change X, Y, Z. Okay, do that, right? And then you have the options like, okay, here's like your top end option, mid option, cheap option, right? Or like economical option, we'll call it. Mm-hmm. And then you go through that. Anyways, and then they're sitting there and they go, okay, here's the total sum. And then you take it out to bid, and then they're like, okay, here we took all the electrical work to like these 3 different electrical companies, and these are the different quotes we got, right? And then they give you a quote, and that's a quote. It's always going to go over budget.
Yeah.
By like probably like 1.5, 1.25 to 1.5. Anyways, and it stinks. So anyways,
it's heavy.
But yeah, I remember with the electrical, I was like, okay, no, let's just go like cheap and cheerful. Like we just need light. Like who cares? No one's gonna look up there. Now I'm so happy that we went with the lighting package we did. Like, and honestly, man, it's nothing crazy, but it just looks cool, and people comment on it, and it's like, it's pretty badass. So yeah. Anyways, again, I digress. I don't even know how we got here, but
yeah. Well, I think you know, there's gyms in the space that have kind of like come and go. Like Vancouver is very fair weather in terms of like, even fan loyalty if you're talking about sports, but if you're talking about like consumerism and people going to different studios, like, you know, you've seen like a space be like trendy and hot and like kind of an Instagram op for like a couple weeks and then kind of, you know, fall off or whatever it is. It's like, what have you identified as like the keys to kind of stay relevant and like stay kind of top of the game, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of different variables to that. I think we have an excellent team. We have amazing people throughout the company. So our coaching staff is, you know, is amazing. One of the best in the city, I'd say, if not the best. So yeah, but aside from just coaches, I think it's the quality of the individuals, and that's even more important to me. Like you can coach to coach, right? Like, you know, okay, this is what you're looking for. Like, you know, but you can't teach a person how to be a good person or how to be a cool person or like a relatable person. Like, obviously, you know, we're not trying to mold the human that they are. We're not trying to mold their personality, but it's like, okay, you know, what are your ethics like? What, you know, what are your moral, like, what's your moral compass like? Like, how, you know, what's your social IQ? You know, what's your relatability to people? You know, what's your story? Like, you know, are you just like a big meathead? You know, and is that all you know, or are you just like a bookworm that knows like the human anatomy inside out? Like, what are you? You know, you need to be a person, and a good person. So yeah, I think people's imperative. And then aside from that, I mean, there's tons. I think it's funny. You just need to be I shouldn't say just, but you need to be persistent, and you need to maintain a quality and a level of service and a certain level of product, and, you know, basically quality control. Like, okay, here's the bar. This is what brought us success. Now we need to maintain that and grow on that. And you can't step back. So, like, you know what? I don't know. I think, you know, some of the staff, I probably annoy the shit out of them because I'm constantly reminding them, like, hey, like, you know, hey, when someone walks in the door, greet them. Say hi. Hey, don't chew with your mouth open behind the desk when someone's trying to speak to you. Hey, clean the chalk off the bars when you're done. Yeah. You know, like, if you, and right, it's the little things. I bought a book recently for our entire staff called Legacy. It's about the New Zealand All Blacks, and it's just about the intangibles, and the big theme on that is sweeping the sheds, and basically the opening story. And I love this book, man. It's like, I think it's a culmination of everything that I believe in, and granted, I have no involvement with the New Zealand All Blacks. I do love rugby, and I do respect their program and that culture, but basically talks about after a game and how it's the 2 most veteran players on the team after everybody's gone. and they're sitting in there with a push broom and they're sweeping the dressing room, right? And it's like no job's too small for the biggest person, basically, right? So it's just talking about the whole is more important than the single, than the individual, right? So I think maintaining a quality product, continuing to try and push that envelope and refine that. So like for us right now, this is a good question. I had a meeting with an individual in fitness, and he was talking about success in the fitness realm. And one of the things was like, what's your differentiator? Like, what's your signature? What makes you different than your competitors? Mm-hmm. And I sat there and I looked at it and I was like, and I asked our staff in our team meeting, right? Because I was interested, and people were like, oh, it's like, the quality. It's the quality of the coaching. And I'm like, I agree. Like, we have extremely high quality coaching. Like, this is great training, this is exceptional training, and we're exceptional coaches, and great eyes and great details and great adaptability and ability to accommodate different individuals. Like, it's not like, okay, coming in back squat, and it's like you watch this guy back squat and you're like, yeah, this guy's back's gonna hurt tomorrow, but we're doing a back squat. Like, no, that's not how we operate, right? It's like, okay, let's try back squat. Okay, you guy can't back squat. Okay, well, let's try front rack. Okay, front rack, you don't like that, it hurts your wrist. Okay, well, let's try goblet. Okay, well, like maybe your bilateral squatting pattern is just it's just not there yet because you lack the ankle mobility. Okay, well, like what are we trying to achieve here? We're trying to stimulate something in the quads, right, and get knee dominant flexion, right, in a squat variation. Okay, well, let's try a lunge. Okay, oh, you can do a lunge. Okay, that's what we're doing. Yeah. Right. So I think that's the difference, right? And it's the ability to, okay, well, like, you got some knee valgus. Okay, well, let's get some lateral perturbation and activate the glute med and like, get the foot stable. Anyway, so like, yeah, sure. But at the end of the day, what are we doing? We're personal training. Yeah. So like, we're not any different. Yeah, the service might be better. Well, right? We're more accommodating. But so like for us right now, what I want to try and do is, how can we differentiate the experience? So the products can remain the same, but how can we differentiate? So what I want to do is try and gamify the workouts a bit. Yep. It's like you come in, you get a metric, right? So you do the workout. Whether that metric is shared publicly is up to you. Like if you want to compare with other people that want to compare, so there's a competitive aspect to it, cool. Or maybe you just want to keep that for yourself, where it's like, okay, I did this workout a month ago, right? I scored a 2.3, and I did a month later, and I scored a 3.7, so therefore I'm improving. Yeah. Right now, how we come to that, I'm not sure. I'm toying with the idea, or we're toying with the idea of something based on relative strength, where it's like a percentage of body weight. Body weight doesn't need to be disclosed because it doesn't matter, right? But because there's nothing like you can go get something on heart rate, right? It's like you go Orange Theory, right? And it's like heart rate based, right? You can go and that's what I mean. It's like, okay, when you go to Ride or you go to Soul Cycle, right? It's like, you're doing spin, but it's choreographed dance on a spin bike. That's their signature, right? Yep. You go to Orange Theory, it's heart rate based, right? You go to Legree, it's like Pilates on a megaformer, right? It's like, there's you go to Moksha or I don't know, Bikram's, right? It's hot yoga, right? But it's like you go to Yard and it's like, it's strength conditioning. Sure, I'm not saying that, it's like, we're different, but it's like really at the end of the day, it's like tomatoes and tomatoes. It's like, sure, we're like an organic sun-ripened heirloom tomato versus like a GMO, like pulpy, shitty like beefsteak tomato, right? But still tomatoes. Yeah. So like, how do we separate? How do we differentiate and add a signature to our offerings? Yeah. So that's the next, for me at least, and us, that's what we want to try and create.
Yeah. It sounds like your existing prop or whatever is like your personal training, but you're actually like listening in a studio capacity where other people aren't. Just like they're just delegating, more right? Cutter, or prescribing. You're listening before you prescribe and giving people the option to modify, bring up and down modifications for the workout program. Totally. And then like you're planning to bring this metric, which is like a means of feedback and a reason to come back, which is like super cool.
Right. So and I think that people were like, okay, well, let's just create a battery of tests, right? And it's like, but not everybody wants to test. Like, I don't want to test, some 75-year-old, individual who's had dual hip replacements, 1 rep max. Like, that just doesn't make sense. That's silly. It's actually stupid, right? In my opinion, right? So how can we create metrics for these individuals that are like simple, easily accessible, low barrier to entry, like not intimidating, and so basically like maybe you do an 8 rep max, on something, 8 rep max, right? And then that spits out, okay, here's your hypothetical 1, right? And then based on your body weight, excuse me, that gives you a score.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So I
Super
mean
cool.
that's kind of the next concept. Now, with that being said, excuse me, sorry. How do we automate this as much as possible? Like, it would be best if it's like, okay, so we know 6 a.m., right? It's like Dom, Ilan, Cam coming in for the group, right? And it's like, boom, you guys walk in, like, I don't know, do you scan something? Does it pull off the software where it's like you guys are on the wall, like on the screen, right? And it's like for every set you do, right? Like, you get a score and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that was a good set, or like whatever, like, and so it's live, like that would be great, right? Then I'm thinking like, okay, well, do you do something like velocity based training? Like, do you get some of those push bands or something like that?
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, I mean, I'm sure, honestly, it's probably out there somewhere. Someone's probably, I'm not the first person to think of this. Definitely not. Someone's probably already thought of this. It's probably in the works, or like, someone might go run with it. But creating, and honestly, like, it'd be even cooler if you could create an algorithm that incorporates various variables. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, heart rate, right? Duration, calories burned, weight lifted, like total ton and body weight. And it's like an algorithm of all those things, a culmination, and you weigh them differently depending on how you view their importance to the, completion of the workout. And then you create a score from that.
Yeah.
Right. But anyways, that kind of stuff's above my head. So
no,
maybe somebody listening could help out with that.
Yeah, it's super cool and scientific, but I think that's a lot of that's what we need to see in the next wave of like fitness, is like, with all the digital stuff that's coming out, Mirror and Peloton, it's like, it's great. We're now bringing the studios home, and like, we're having these live experiences from the couch, but there's still like a lack of feedback beyond heart rate, and there's so many metrics like we could learn about ourselves a lot.
And I mean, just to be super clear on it, like, what we do pride ourselves on is, as you said, the ability to provide progressions and regressions, and the adaptability to accommodate and feed various appetites based on that individual's specific goals and objectives, right? Like, okay, I want to come in and I want to get stronger. Okay, well, how are you going to get stronger, right? Okay, well, we want to ensure that we're not compounding an issue. So quality of movement is of the utmost importance to us. Like, we're not going to load you up and increase the load on the individual if that frame and your mechanics, your biomechanics can't accommodate that, right? So like, if you have really poor movement patterns, we're not going to load that up. We're going to correct those movement patterns and then progressively load that, right? So just to be clear, it's like, I don't want to sit there and just be able to provide a metric and like throw quality out the window. Like, that's what brought us success. Like, what brought you success? Quality of coaching. So you need to maintain that quality of coaching, right? And that service. And now what's the next layer, right? Well, now it's like, okay, these people move well, or like whatever, like these people are ready for like the next, like, maybe it's called walk in the yard. I don't know, right? But and then, okay, now you've graduated to that. Okay, well, now you can start. You can compete now. Like CrossFit did that, right? Yeah. It's like, and theirs is super simple, right? It's like, I mean, I don't even know what they do. You get scores based on reps, time. Well,
weight, and that's the one critique of CrossFit, is that they kind of did it backwards. Is like, they came with hella metrics, and they said, "Oh, screw your form."
Yeah, exactly.
Do 20 of these.
Yeah. So okay. So I mean, now let's just do like them. The one thing I'll say though, and I mean, maybe this is good, but everything's so manual with them, right? Like, correct me if I'm wrong. It's like you go in, and it's like you need someone, who's sanctioned, like tracking your scores. Yeah. Now, I don't know. Maybe that's good, right? But it's like, there's also something with the digital age where it's like people want immediate feedback, right? Like, I personally think it would be wicked. It's like, yard releases, yard workout of the day. Well, we won't call it workout of the day because CrossFit calls that. Yard releases, the yard, I don't know. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Here's a workout. Anybody in the world can do it, right? Yeah. Anybody in the world can do it. You can do it at a yard, affiliated facility. You can do it at home, right? And anyways, and you do it. And I mean, that's where the integrity of it comes into play, where it's like, okay, yeah, well, you got to do 10 squats, right? Or whatever. At like, you're going 4 sets of 10, but then it's like, okay, well, if we can't see you, then how do we know that you did them? Yeah. How do we know the quality of them? You know what I mean? How do we know you did 10? Yeah. You know what I mean? And so that's where the integrity, but it would be cool. And then it's like, oh man, like who's this beast in like, you know, Milan, Italy? Like, you know, he crushed the yard challenge today, right? Like, oh, like, you know, and then there's different categories you compare, you know, men, women, age brackets, like, you know, weight categories, like whatever. But you get live. I think that would be wicked.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Now, how the hell to get there? I don't know.
That's the discovery.
But yeah, honestly, like it would be great if you could integrate with one of these wearables, right? Where it's like an Apple Watch ID, you come in, you literally scan, it's like, boom, you're on the wall.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's coming.
Yeah.
And soon, like, all these ideas will align with, like,
Yeah.
you know, an easier way to get it done.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So hopefully, I think that could be really, really special.
Yeah.
Just something different, at least for strength, because there's nothing really like that for strength.
Yeah.
To my knowledge. I know there's, you know, there's different apps they're trying to create out there with that kind of stuff, but metric-based strength training. Yeah. And obviously the most simple metric is weight, right? Weight, reps, sets. Like you can, but it's very manual, right? So it's like, how do you get a score, which is a culmination of the entire training session, right? I think that would be cool. So anyways, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of is the start, or one of like questions in closing is kind of just like what's your future plan for the company? And like the way I see it, or if I'm hearing your vision correctly, is like you're thinking very digitally in terms of like scalability.
Yeah, I think I love human interaction. I think it's imperative to civilization, and I think that's what separates us. Like, you know, honestly, man, like screw Peloton, screw Mirror, like you know, F that. Like it serves a purpose, but at the end of the day, like the last thing people need, especially after the last 3 years, is more social distancing.
Yeah.
Like people need to come together, and I think that was a saving grace for our business, is we were able to, you know, transition, for lack of a better term, pivot and maintain that human interaction. And I think that's so unique, and that is so special. And so I never want to forego that. But yeah, I do want to scale the business, and I do want to grow the business and expand the business, and that's something that we want to do. How to do that? I mean, I think there's different ways to do it. The one is the digital element of it, you know, online training and et cetera, and metrics and gamifying and, you know, yard workouts so that you create a score, but also opening more locations. So I would like to open more locations. We will open a second location here, when to be determined, probably in the next 2 to 3 years, likely. But you know, even more than that, and I think where that is, I'm not sure, but I would like to get a good handle, at least on like Vancouver. How many, you know, without cannibalizing, to be determined. Again, very wary to scale and expand too fast. So it's nice right now. Like we have our, you know, yard 1.0, let's call it, you know, where we are currently. And that's kind of a guinea pig, and it's fun. We can try stuff, right? And we've tried stuff before, and it's worked, and it's still there. And then we've tried stuff, and it's failed, and it's like, it's quick and easy. Like it's nice. It's like, okay, let's try this out. Okay, this offering, like we're not getting good, you know, attendance. Like, okay, scrap it. Like, or it's like, okay, why isn't it working? Change the programming. Still not getting it. Change the time. Still not working. Okay, you know what? Maybe this just isn't what our demographic is coming for. So like, why try to be something we're not? What are we? Strength training, right? We're really good at strength training, and that's our bread and butter. That's our product. Well, continue to offer that. You know, like for example, excuse me, we did a conditioning class. And it was like good, like it was okay. But then, you know, I mean, I think there might still be a place for it, but then it's kind of like, okay, at the end of the day, like if people want to go get their asses kicked, where are they going to go? They're going to go to Barry's, you know, where nobody cares about their form, but you know, they're literally going to get shit kicked. They're going to ask to sprint at 100%, 110% effort on an incline for a minute. That's humanly impossible. And they're going to do it 10 times over. Like, yeah, you know what? That would kick fucking anyone's ass, excuse me. Right? But like, hey, bravo, Barry. Like, crack the code, and, you know, people love it. They eat it up. So, yeah, kudos to you. But, like, we're not going to try to compete with that. So, okay, you guys got that one. You guys got the shit kicker. Now, we'll provide the quality, and we'll correct all the injuries that come out of those. And that's cool, so thank you. But, you know, that's what we do. So stick to that, right? So, yeah, anyways.
Cool. Questions about recovery. Just in like what kinds of things do you do to kind of like come to balance, like mentally and physically?
Oh man, that's a good question, buddy. Something that I value more and more and more as of late. I definitely reached a point, especially over the last couple of years, towards the tail end of it, where my personal health was taking a toll. I got some blood work done, and my hormones were all out of whack. And it was a byproduct of just not taking care of myself, and the stress was a big component of it. So that's cool, and so I'm addressing that, and I think rest, sleep is like the number one performance enhancing drug. So if you're not, rest is a weapon.
Yeah.
I remember a guy used to train with Kendall McCardle. That was his thing. Rest is a weapon. Anyway, so yeah, sleep. Try to get, as much sleep as possible. Get to bed early, get good quality sleep, like good sleep environment. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole too much, but sleep's number one. I also try to separate myself from work, and it's really hard to do because, if I have downtime and I'm in the city and like I'm not doing anything, I'm definitely thinking about work.
Yeah.
Right. And so like even walking here, I think I walked the entire way here with my head in my phone, and that's disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, I'm surprised I didn't step in some shit. But with that being said, trying to get out of the city. So I was like, okay, when I'm in here, I know that I'm running on jet fuel and I'm going 110 miles an hour when I'm in the city. And that's cool because that's just the way I'm wired. Yeah. Right. But it's like I also need to complement that with time to separate and recover. So, you reach a certain point where my productivity is diminishing, and the quality of the product going out there is lower and lower and lower. So, what? Like, cut your losses, get the hell out of Dodge, right? Go. And so I love going camping. My parents have a spot on the island I like to get away to. And honestly, what I do there is like a whole lot of nothing. Like, camp, have a fire, go for a hike, go for a walk, maybe cut some fire, like I sound like, but it's like you kind of go back and just simplify things.
Love it.
Right? Recharge, come back refreshed, clarity. And speaking of mental clarity, actually, I've been doing a lot more run training. I'm training for a race, a big ultra marathon, and I'm not a marathoner, but anyways, it's a good challenge. But running has provided like tons of mental clarity. I find like it's just you, and I barely listen to music anymore. Just you, yourself, your thoughts, and I just think about the same stuff. And I come to a lot of conclusions and a lot of answers. So that's been really nice.
Awesome.
But yeah, aside from that, alcohol does not help anybody.
Yeah.
It's a fun time here and there in moderation.
Of course.
But definitely pulled back on that. Just even socially. Like, it's like, okay, like, yeah, I could have a couple, 3 beers, but it's like, I know I'm not going to feel that sharp tomorrow. Yeah. My sleep's going to be dog shit.
Not like you used to.
Yeah, it's like, what's the point, So pulling back there. And then nutrition is critical. So, I mean, really, it's like things everybody knows, and it's like less is more. Like, sleep more, eat better, cut out the booze, exercise, spend time with friends, family, and make sure you take care of yourself and respect your own boundaries.
Yeah, as redundant as it might sound, like it's important for like even if you're saying the same things that people have said before, it's like that constant reminder to somebody back home that like, oh man, that's really all it is, and like I just need to be consistent on
that. Oh yeah, totally. Consistency is key. Like, excuse me, it's easy to be a hero for a day, a week, right? And it's like we've all done it, right? But it's like, okay, what are you doing? Monday to Friday, what are you doing on the weekend? Right. And I was guilty of that, and like still am sometimes, it's like, okay, like I'm meal prepping, get my sleep, and then it's like, oh, Friday night, like I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna crush a dozen drinks, and then like and then I'm gonna go eat a greasy breakfast on the thing, and I'm not gonna exercise for 3 days. And then on Monday I start over, and I'm like, oh man, like why do I feel like I got hit by a train? Like I didn't drink last night, but it's like no, but for the last 72 hours you've been a sack of potatoes, just abusing yourself. So, totally. I think it's consistency is critical. Yeah.
The next one's a bit of a weird one. Is if I was at your house, what would I find there that I wouldn't find at others?
That's a good question, man. Buddy, what would you find there that you would not find at others? Like anywhere in the house?
Yeah, just something special you got at home.
Ooh, something special. You know what? I have a lot of... This makes me feel bad because they're not all up on the wall. I have a lot of collages and puzzles from my grandma. My grandma loves to give us little gifts. I mean, I know that's not that fun.
Yeah, something different.
Yeah, but it's definitely different. Yeah.
Cool. Kind of the last one in closing is if you could live inside of any movie, which one would it be and why?
Oh, man. I mean, like, I don't know if this is your way of asking my favorite movie. I mean, my 2 favorite movies are Heat and Bull Durham. I don't know necessarily that I want to live inside heat, because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
like, they all die, and
Right.
maybe I'm like Al Pacino, but I did really like Val Kilmer and Robert De Niro in that flick. Like, that's a badass flick. So yeah, maybe I'll go for Bull Durham, and I'll play Crash Davis, Kevin Costner. Yeah, I mean, I think he had a pretty good time down there with the Durham Bulls.
Cool.
So yeah, let's say that.
Alrighty. The last one is just like kind of a message to your younger self. Like, would you change anything? Did you like the path? Any kind of words of advice?
I mean, they always say no regrets. Whether or not, like, I fully agree with that, not entirely. To my younger self, lots of times, you know, I think people they take themselves too seriously, and that can be debilitating. In the same light, like, I think that the level of seriousness and the intensity at which I approach a lot of things in my life is why I found success in those elements. So I'm resident to say, you know, don't take things too seriously. I mean, yeah, honestly, I wouldn't change too much. There's things I wish I had done differently, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't be where I am today. And this sounds so cliche, but I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't done all those things and learned those lessons. So a lot of mistakes, tons of failures. And as I said, things that, like, yeah, I do regret. But if I hadn't have made those errors, then who knows when I would have, because obviously it's in me to make those errors. So I'm a lot happier that I made those errors and made those mistakes, you know, when I did, than as opposed to now, because they'd be a lot more costly now. And I'm going to continue to make mistakes and errors, but hopefully they're not to the same extent as those that I made, you know, as a younger man. So yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of bars today.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. Yeah, appreciate you coming on, and all the best, and for the continued success of Yard Athletics. And
appreciate that, man. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on. Honestly, that was a ton of fun, and this is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. So I really appreciate you, you know, extending the invite and having me on, and hopefully all the listeners and everyone involved enjoy themselves and is able to pull some value out of it, and you know, a couple laughs along the way.
absolutely.